Fellas, you know Degree Cool Rush deodorant, right? Well, last year they changed the formula, and guys were mad about it. One dude even started a petition. So guess what? Degree heard us, admitted they messed up, and brought the original Cool Rush scent back exactly how it was. And it's in Walmart, Target, and other stores now for under $4. So grab some and remember why its cool, crisp, and fresh scent made it the #1 men's antiperspirant for the last decade. Degree Cool Rush is back, and it smells like victory for all of us.
The kind of old-fashioned cop who preferred working the streets and making arrests to taking tests toward promotion. He was the closest thing New York had to a Dirty Harry.
This is One Tough Podcast. Here's your host, Bo Dietl.
Welcome to One Tough Podcast. I'm here, like always, with my main man, Carlo from the Bronx. He's the producer. He's also my chief of staff. Today, we have a guy here today that I'm so excited about. I've been doing this podcast a year and a half, had some very special guests, but this is my most special guest. We go back a ways, and he's the former great mayor, the best one we ever had in New York, the mayor of New York City, but more important, my friend, Rudy Giuliani. Mr. Mayor, welcome to our show.
Great to be with you, Bo. You know, we do go back a long ways, and I have great respect for you. And I also think you're one of the smartest and certainly one of the funniest guys on radio, television. I always told you, you should be a stand-up comedian, damn.
Well, you know what? This relationship started
You're
a
a
while
hell of an investigator.
Started a while ago when the current mayor that we're sitting here with, Mayor Giuliani, when he first decided to run for mayor of New York City in 1988, I had written a book, One Tough Cop, and it was just funny. I met Mr. Giuliani. I knew of him for a long time, and he knew of my background growing up in Ozone Park.
Everybody knew about
with
detective
Gotti and Scopo and all that. And then it just was really funny that we became friends, and I supported his first run. And I'll never forget your first little speech. And I was standing in the back, and I said, I'm for you, Mayor Giuliani. And then what happened was we lost the first one. And the second one, we band together about 50 cars against the cheating Democrats in Brooklyn. They would cheat. They would drive around with buses and vote 2, 3, 4 times. Oh, really? And I had 50 cars out there. We pulled that one off. Then we pulled it off for Pataki, and we were able to hold down the Republicans in New York State. And that was the last good reign in New York State of real Republican leaders here in New York.
We had surpluses instead of budget shortfalls. We gave money back to the taxpayers. We reduced taxes by 24%. And we brought crime down. I did, before I left, brought crime down about 65%.
And we didn't
Murder
have...
down 60%. And we virtually eliminated auto theft. 80%.
Wow.
Reduction in auto theft.
And we didn't have 70,000 homeless people on the street either.
We had almost none. Because we sent the police and a social worker up to each one of them and said, you can't sleep here. Sorry, streets are not for sleeping. So you're going to have to come with us, or you're going to have to get out of New York. One or the other. You want to come to the shelter? We'll take you. Otherwise, you're going to have to walk around all night.
You know, and for some reason, the other side, and we call them the other side, they just can't accept success. Like with our current president and our former mayor, Giuliani, what he did as being mayor, what the president's doing as president, it's just continued success. And they get angry when people are successful instead of putting their arms around it. You know, Rudy, I just can't understand why people don't want to support success.
Well, when I ran for re-election, I had kept every promise. Crime was already down about 45% then. Taxes were lower. I could show that people were getting like 20 and 30% more back. And I won by 18%. Even though the media...
In an area in New York City that's probably 6 to 1 Democrat. That's abnormal.
So my hope is that it works with the president. I got through to the people. The New York Times, the New York Times actually endorsed me for re-election. I think it's the only editorial they ever wrote favorable. And it's the funniest thing. They must have got somebody out of Mississippi to write it, because it was like totally different, all their editorials. They just listed all my accomplishment, said he deserves re-election. It was almost like they held their nose and said, we got her endorsement.
But do you think they actually felt the quantifiable difference? You know,
no, they never. I mean,
they never did.
this is hard for me to say, but you'll rarely see anyone in the Times ever write that I was a great mayor. I mean, everybody else will write it. I mean, it's not even debatable. I mean, I reduced crime more than any mayor in the history of the city. I reduced unemployment more than any mayor. We went from 10.5 to 5% in unemployment. I got 500,000 people off the welfare rolls, 400,000 with jobs. Poor people were doing much better under me than under all the phony liberal Democrats, just like Trump. Look, poor people, African Americans, Latinos, any poor people, haven't done this well under any president that I can think of. There's actual increase in their wages.
Yeah.
Actual increase in their wages, percentage-wise equal to and better than a lot of other people. Well, this is crazy. I mean, I think what happens, I was analyzing this last night. I think what happens to liberals, because it goes back to the limousine liberals we used to have in the 70s, you know, give all the money to the poor, but God forbid you take a poor person home for dinner. You know, it wouldn't fit in a Fifth Avenue apartment. That's too clean. I think they get in a fantasy world. You know, health care for all. Health care for all, if they did it the way they want to do it, would put out of business 30% of our hospitals the next day. 30% of our hospitals gone because government only gives them 80%. They get the other 20% from private insurance. You take private insurance out, they go bankrupt. Nobody thinks about that. So they say stupid things. Don't have to pay your loans.
Who's going to pay for them?
What are the taxes going to be? 90%? 90% tax? So they say stupid things, and they don't think rationally, which is why I named my podcast Common Sense. I said the thing that I think is the most important thing in a political leader is you have common sense. It all started with Thomas Paine, and I try to approach problems not as a Republican, not as a Democrat, but common sense. Mm-hmm. How do you get people off welfare? There's no Republican solution, Democratic solution. Here's what I did. First thing I did was, when you came in for welfare, I offered you a job instead. I said, we got a job down the street in Joe's bakery. You can work there.
Yeah.
I don't do bakery work. Okay, then you don't get welfare. Then I went back and I reviewed the entire list, and we brought people in and we offered them jobs. If they didn't take the job, we took them off welfare. Then I fingerprinted them.
Yeah.
Why did I fingerprint them? Because Morgenthau had done a big case in which he revealed thousands of people that were collecting twice and 3 times. 78 worked for the police department. Clerical staff of the police department. They'd collect in Manhattan. They'd collect in Queens. And they may go out to New Jersey and collect, or go out to Nassau County and collect. So we started finger imaging, and I did a deal with Westchester, Nassau, Suffolk. We finally got New Jersey in. We created a database. So then when you came in, it took 6 months. Mm-hmm. Give you a finger image, and you're out in Nassau County. Sorry, go see the police department.
This is
cut it all out.
Mr. Mayor, this is a perfect example, which I get crazed when they say that they don't want voters to have identification if they have fingerprint to vote. To vote is one of the greatest assets you have in a democracy. And what is the problem? You go on a plane, you have to show identification. What is the problem? It's just something negative that they can cheat on. And like the perfect example is what's going on in New York City today with this corrupt mayor that we have. With this corrupt mayor.
I think he's calling you.
No, they're Big Bird.
Yeah,
Big Bird's his name. And what's going on with his pay-for-play? The school, no, he will never be at Rayo's with me. And I told him right on when I debate him, you'll never come to Rayo's. Maybe you'll go to Mount Morris Park. No, Rayo's. But the point is, I mean, look at it. Even with our school system, you have kids. Oh, yeah, they got high graduation rates, but none of them can read and write. They're just pushing them right through. And then we got this little Mexican jumping bean from wherever he came from, Carranza, and he's an indignant piece of garbage. And every time he speaks, he speaks down to people. He doesn't understand the people of New York City. He should be gathering up and supportive of them.
That's another liberal attribute. Not only are they limousine liberals, and they want solutions for you, but not them, but they look down on us. They look down on us. They look down on people who are not liberal, people who are moderate or conservative, particularly, as not being as intelligent as they are. That's how you get Hillary saying that, people who voted for Trump were all deplorables.
Yeah, and Walmart garbage.
And they believe they're better educated. They believe they're more intelligent. They believe they're more sophisticated. And therefore, we need to be held in place because we're going to hurt people. And this is a completely elitist attitude that's belied by the facts. I mean, first of all, I think I'm a lot brighter than all of them. And I think I have a better appreciation of, I like to debate them all on opera and classical music and see who wins.
You're a Renaissance man.
Yeah, those of us who are conservatives are not a bunch of stupid morons. I read books, right? I write. I love opera and classical music. I'm as intelligent and sophisticated as they are, except I don't look down on people.
And beyond that,
my father brought me up this way. I judge a man by how he treats, he used to say the shoe shine boy in those days. And he said, you want to have a friend? It doesn't matter how do they treat the teacher, how do they treat the boss, watch how he treats the waiter. Watch how he treats somebody that might be thought of as lower than him. But you never think of anybody as lower than you because you're no better than they are and they're no better than you, top or bottom. Treat everybody the same. And the reality is these people are a bunch of elitists. The New York Times editorial board sits around thinking, they're much smarter than the whole world. And the fact is they're so closed off from the world. They live in such an elitist bubble, in such a, New York,
Tower.
Manhattan cocktail party in a $50 million building, that they don't have the slightest idea what poor people, middle-class people go through or any empathy for.
Right. Now,
they make things worse for them. And I used to say, when I was taking people off welfare, and when I made kids who were going to college for free, when I made them work part-time, I used to go tell them, I love you more. Do you understand that I love you more? It's like if your parents just let you do anything you want. They don't love you.
You
They're
want
just
to
lazy.
get value of working.
I love you, and I want you to have the work ethic. If I could give you a pill and give you the work ethic, I just took care of 90% of your problems. If you have the desire to work, do anything you have to do to support your family, you're going to be okay, and you can be very successful. And these liberals mislead you. They encourage bad dependencies. They encourage bad conduct. So don't have identification when you vote. What does that encourage? It encourages people to cheat.
Yeah, what would be the reason not to have it?
And it's ridiculous to say we got to trust all people. That's ridiculous. Madison wrote in the Federalist Papers, if men were angels, we wouldn't need government. Well, we just got to realize that some portion of the population are sociopaths. They're bad people. They're going to hurt good people. I wish that wasn't true, but I'm not going to put myself in some kind of a bubble and say, "Oh, everybody should be trusted." To let's not even have people in grocery stores take all the food you want and pay whatever you want.
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? It's voluntary payment. It's the kind of stupid idea.
The thing that Mr. Mayor, the thing that I've noticed.
Jesus, that might be Bernie's next suggestion.
Well, you know what, Mr. Mayor? One thing I know, we're close in age a little bit. You're a little ahead of me, not too much. But the point I noticed now, even with the election of Obama, I was not a big fan of him, but I respected him as the president. I didn't have a hatred for him. What they've done with our president, President Trump, is there's a vile hatred. And all these left liberals, they're ready to have a fist fight. You can't have a conversation to explain your side like what you're doing now. You try to have a conversation with these liberal guys, they're ready to fight with you. And I can't believe I've seen this in my lifetime, just in the last 10 years.
You or I are going to get in trouble given the way we grew up. You know that.
Yeah, but
one of these days we're going to pop somebody.
No, it's just so horrible. You can't have a conversation.
I have to remind myself, when they start it with me, I have to remind myself, they're trying to egg me on. They say terrible things.
I know, and they're just trying, and they won't. They just seal it off. I listen to both sides. One thing I've learned as I got older, Mr. Mayor, is that I look at both sides. I relate to people not having it, and where we can help them, we help them. But I like what you say. You train them for jobs. You don't just give it. And there should be no indifference for someone who earned it, worked hard, worked 18 hours a day, build a business, and have a couple of bucks more. Well, that's the reward. That's what capitalism is. My dear friend Ken Langone, we had on here. Ken Langone is the epitome of one of the hard.
My friend, too.
Yeah, he expressed himself about what the hard work ethics, and it's there for everyone. And right now, if you're a young African American or Latino, you probably have more of a benefit because now arms are opening up and you want to work hard, you'll succeed more so. And I think the African American vote for Trump is going to be surprisingly, I hear it's about over 30% already, because people are living better. Their children are living better. They're living a better life. They're not looked upon as being secondary anything. They're all equal. So that's what has to be taken into consideration. When people vote for the next presidential election, they have to realize, where are you now? Where were you with all the promises, all the liberals, all the Democrats, every one of our cities, Chicago, Baltimore, New York City, every one of our Democratic cities, San Francisco, are just gone into the toilet bowl with your Democrat leaders there who are out of control. Simple.
Well, I think that's a study that is long past being due, which is to take a look at the connection between our broken down, crime-ridden cities and 50 years, 100 years of Democratic rule. The reason I was able to change the city is real simple. I wasn't a Democrat.
And there was no corruption when you were there.
I wasn't a Democrat. I was independent. After I appointed 10 people, I appointed all the Republicans in the city. So I could create my own government. I didn't owe it to the unions.
There was no scandal, Mr. Mayor.
I didn't owe it to the crooked political bosses who, I put half of them in jail under Koch.
Colin, did you know when
under Koch, who was not a dishonest man.
But there was a lot of corruption.
In fact, I'll give you an example. I investigated the Koch administration the way Mueller attempted to investigate Trump. I never once demonized Koch. When one or two of my assistants started to try to do that, I cut it off. I told them, next time you do it, you're fired. And I put out an extraordinary statement that Koch was not under investigation and that there was no evidence that Koch was involved in the corruption. And I did that because it would be unfair to connect the corruption to him by innuendo. Now, you don't have that kind. Right now, there's supposedly an investigation of me in the Southern District of New York. They won't tell me what they're investigating me for. I get leaks of it.
In the press.
Every once in a while, I'm investigated for being a foreign representative of Ukraine. I want to go in there. I say, look, if you have something, let me show you the records. I have a contract with Ukraine. It says I'm not going to be a foreign agent. I never have been a foreign agent for anybody. Go check the records. You can see it. So can we get rid of that one? Then they say I was a partner in a business with that character, Lev Parnas. No record of being a partner.
The one they paraded there, they wanted to bring him in.
His partner for years, Igor Fruman, will testify for me. And he will say he was never a partner in the business. Lev is lying. Mm-hmm. Okay, we get rid of that one. But they love having those innuendos. They did it to the president. They love having the innuendos out there.
Well, that guy with the big eyes, that Schiff, that psychopath, we have all the evidence. We have it. He had nothing.
But they get away with it. Now, what I'm doing, I got a project going on that's going to continue even after he's acquitted tomorrow for a couple of weeks, maybe 2 weeks. I've done 5 episodes, 3 have been on, and I'm trying the case in my podcast. What I'm doing is I did an opening statement, put on the first witness. You can see Shokin testifying live. Not live on tape.
Yeah.
But you see a real person, not this whistleblower who wants to put a thing over his head and he wants to hide, he wants to be behind a curtain. I mean, you do this in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
In America, Shokin, you stand up for what you're saying. And I also have an affidavit where he goes to jail if he's lying. He says Biden bribed the president to fire me, and he says the reason he did it was I was hot on the tail of his son, the rich guy that owned it, because he was doing it for him too.
Yeah.
and the rich company. And the coincidence of this is these bullshit artists say...
Well, you can say that on my podcast.
They say things like, it was debunked, they weren't under investigation. I want you to think about the month of February 2016. February 2nd, Shokin arrests Burisma. How is it not under investigation if he arrests the damn company, stops them from doing business? February 18th, he gets a notice, I should have brought it with me, from the Latvian government of a money laundering scheme in which Hunter Biden is smack in the middle. His name is right in the record. They're saying he wasn't under investigation. Yeah? Well, look at this record in the prosecutor's office. He's not under investigation. Now, is it a coincidence that they arrest Burisma? The kid is under investigation for $14.8 million money laundering. And Joe Biden calls the president of the Ukraine 4 times on the telephone in the month of February.
Nobody knows that.
4 times on the telephone. This is the way I convicted people with circumstantial evidence like this. This evidence is better than, they say, well, Shokin's corrupt. Who cares if he's corrupt? If he's telling the truth. How many
rats?
Sammy the Bull was corrupt.
We had the FBI agent.
I never prosecuted a criminal without having some guy that was a little bit of a criminal himself testify. Main thing is he corroborated? Yeah, he's corroborated by the Burisma arrest. He's corroborated by the money laundering documents. Mm-hmm. He's corroborated by Biden's actions. And finally, the best corroboration of him? Joe Biden, big mouth on tape.
Yeah, when he said it.
Shokin is saying nothing different than what Biden is saying. Biden says on tape, I told that president, if you don't get rid of the prosecutor, you're not getting your $1 billion loan guarantee. You got 6 hours or I'm out of here.
That's pro quo to me.
Shokin says he intimidated, threatened, extorted, and bribed my president to fire me. My president came to me and told me that he did it. So what is Biden lying? Hey, Joe, I know you're not so smart, but you went to law school. I know you kind of cheated your way through with plagiarism, but you went to law school. Here's the definition of bribery. Mm-hmm. Offering a thing of value for official action. $1 billion loan guarantee.
Drop the charges.
Number 2, get rid of the prosecutor of the official action. Finally, is it corrupt? Why'd you do it? You did it because the big guy who owned the company bribed you back in 2014. He said, Joe, I'm going to pay your son, who nobody would hire for anything.
Fredo, the real Fredo.
He got 5 times in rehabilitation. Busts out of the military when Joe pulls strings to get him in at 40. He was in the public relations office, and he blew a drug test. I mean, there's not a lot of pressure in the public relations office. He obviously doesn't have PTSD in the public relations office. He busts out of that. He has one company experience where the company goes bankrupt and one guy goes to jail for a Ponzi scheme. You're going to take that guy and you're going to put him on the board of a worldwide corporation that's under serious criminal investigation for any reason other than to bribe Joe Biden, to buy the office. This family made a mockery of American law and American ethics.
And it gets deeper, Mr. Mayor. It gets
deeper.
You know
how many times this damn family do this?
We're not even with China. We're not even with China yet. This guy is all over the place.
You remember the RICO case? Remember RICO? All the RICO cases I did?
Yep.
So this one is the Biden family case.
RICO. All over.
Okay. Now, what's the Biden family? The Biden family is a business. What's their product? Joe's public office. They monetize Joe's public office. They do it when he's in the Senate. Now, when do they do it when he's in Washington? Every time that Obama names him point man, 2 things happen.
Makes money on it.
He's got to go solve a problem for the U.S. He fails. And the family walks out with millions of dollars. So they send him to Iraq. He's supposed to get a status of forces agreement for us so we can keep troops in Iraq and protect people. Joe fails. His brother gets 1/3 of a $1.5 billion housing contract in Iraq, and he doesn't know a damn thing about housing. Sound familiar? Okay. Now we go to Ukraine. He makes him point man in Ukraine. What's he supposed to accomplish? He's supposed to lessen the corruption and get rid of the Russians. Well, he doesn't lessen the corruption. He contributes to it, right? And the Russians, they won't even give him lethal weapons. Russians are supposed to fight. I mean, I'm not the Russians, the Ukrainians. They won't even give them lethal weapons. Ukrainians are going to have to fight the Russians with slingshots under Obama. Mm-hmm. So he fails in that mission. The kid comes out with $5 to $8 million in laundered funds. There's a $900,000 payment for laundering Joe Biden. And there may be, we're still working on it, there may be a few more other laundered payments that we're working on.
Unbelievable.
Now, so family makes millions in Ukraine, U.S. fails, Biden family makes millions, U.S. fails in Iraq, Biden family. Now we go to China. China, he goes over there, a specific mission. Chinese were encroaching on the islands that they claim with Japan. They were sending military there. Obama was very worried about it, but Obama only worried. He never did anything. And he sent his most useless guy.
Fredo.
He failed at everything. Sent him to China to, have the Chinese back off. What do you think the odds are he's going to succeed at that?
Not very good.
Right. He never succeeded at anything. He failed in Iraq. He failed in Ukraine. He goes to China, takes Air Force 2, and he brings his son, Hunter, with him. They come back. Joe fails. Hunter did real well. 8 to 12 days later, the Bank of China signs up as a partner in its private equity fund. They eventually commit $1.5 million. So we have the Bank of China owned by the Chinese government. So we have the Chinese government in partnership with the son of the VP and the son of the Secretary of State, because Chris Hines was part of that company. And do you know who the third partner was? The nephew of Whitey Bulger.
Holy mackerel.
Can you believe the press doesn't cover this? The damn corrupt press doesn't cover it?
Well, no, they did cover something. Referring to
Peter Schweiker wrote the book.
No, to Ukraine. I got the call from two reporters from the New York Times saying they saw me with you in Ukraine, and I said, "Why don't you just print it, man?" Yeah. They go, "Bo Dietl, you were with Rudy Giuliani in Ukraine." Remember when they called me twice? I said, yeah, "Are you going to verify now?" I said, "Why don't you print it? You know everything. This is perfect example. Why isn't this brought out?"
Because the Biden family is corrupt. What I just described to you, they were doing for lesser money when he was senator. They were monetizing his office. And his answer has always been, "I don't know my family's business." Well, after you answer that 2 or 3 times, the answer doesn't work anymore. Okay, he didn't know about James here. Then all of a sudden we get to Ukraine. He said, I didn't know about Bo. Hey, don't you read the newspapers? On December 8th, 2015, a guy named James Risen, who now regrets it because he's a big lib, wrote an article pointing out the conflict in Ukraine, pointing out that the kid was getting money from this crooked oligarch, that Joe was supposed to deal with corruption, and wouldn't this make it difficult for Joe to deal with corruption? Of course it made it difficult. It made it a joke. The United States is a laughingstock in Ukraine. Biden would go there. He went there 13 times, and he would say, "We want you not to be corrupt." And they'd all say, "Okay, here's a good start. Get your son out of that damn no-show job with the crookedest guy, and then maybe we can make a start." I mean, we don't have a reporter, we don't have an investigative reporter here who can make that damn connection because they're so damn corrupted by their hatred of Trump. They're in love with the Democratic Party. They did the same thing with Hillary. The case against Hillary, when Comey finished and said, no prosecutor would prosecute this case, I looked at him and I said, "You have got to be the biggest sellout I know. There's no prosecutor that wouldn't. I would give my eye teeth to prosecute a case where 33,000 emails were disposed. Are gone.
That's evidence.
Cell phones are smashed up with a hammer. That they bleach bit. The only people who bleach bit are money launderers. They bleach bit this. You got 5 false statements by her. The case is like overwhelming.
And they don't prosecute.
I could give it to a first-year prosecutor, except for the fact that the press would drive you crazy if you did that. The Biden case is so strong that it would be, if we can't do this, we can't convince Ukraine that they should be honest.
No.
Because what happened is, very simply, it was corruption at the highest levels of 2 governments. You'd have to say, who corrupted whom? The vice president of the United States corrupted the president of Ukraine, or the president of Ukraine corrupted the vice president of the United States. The president of Ukraine, who was his friend, was the most corrupt man in Ukraine. And there's nobody who'll disagree with this. Poroshenko was known to the people in the street as he took everything that wasn't nailed down. He stole everything. He put for this case, for the Burisma case, so Joe gets the case tanked. As soon as that happens, 4 cases are dismissed. because he helped Soros, too. He got a Soros case
That's
dismissed.
the guy behind this
He
whole
got
thing.
the Soros case dismissed. He got a case involving collusion dismissed. He got about 5 cases dismissed. They come to Burisma, and Poroshenko slows it down. After he agreed to fire the prosecutor, he brings a new prosecutor in. Poroshenko slows it down. In the middle of the summer, Poroshenko has the prosecutor announce that this is a very good case again. Now, why did he do it? Because he wanted to shake down Zlochevsky. He wanted to shake down the owner, to say to the owner, hey, I'll take care of the kid, Hunter, but I still got you with your $5 billion you stole and your business. You're living in Monaco. You can't come back here. You want to come back here, you're going to give me some of that $5 billion you stole. So we have evidence that varies a little because it's tough to get the evidence, but we have evidence that he got at least $20 million in bribes.
Wow.
That Poroshenko did. Joe's pal. And Joe likes to say, he got Shokin fired because Shokin was corrupt. What about your best friend, Poroshenko? He was the most corrupt man in Ukraine. Everybody knew it. He never said a damn thing. And that ambassador supported him for re-election, Yovanovitch, and she's supposed to care about corruption. You couldn't possibly support the president of Ukraine if you were concerned about corruption. Mm-hmm. He was a massive thief. He's now under investigation. They've raided his home. There are articles in Ukrainian newspapers that he took over $100 million. Everybody knew it. I'm telling you, everybody knew it. I talked to Democrats in those days, and they'd say it's a shame that Poroshenko double-crossed us and became such a thief. Now, what is Biden doing being pals with him? And how can Biden have us believe that he cares about corruption if he goes after this Pisher, this prosecutor? If you meet Shokin's a 70-year-old man who they tried to kill. They tried to poison him.
Right.
And I should have brought it with me, but I'm going to send you the medical record because whenever you say that, they think, you're exaggerating. Mm-hmm. In September of this year, all of a sudden he's rushed to the hospital. He's having 2 heart attacks. He actually has to be revived twice. Finally, they bring him to a hospital in Austria that helped to save Viktor Yushchenko's life, who was poisoned by Putin.
The Russian,
right.
Yeah. And the doctor there, Dr. Korpin, has a definitive opinion.
With the toxology.
The primary diagnosis, mercury poisoning. Mm-hmm. 9.2 mLs of mercury. The healthy amount is 2 ml. There's damage to his liver, damage to his kidney. They definitely tried to kill him. And I'm not suggesting Biden has part of this, but Biden's involved in this whole big thing. Poroshenko knows he sits at the top of this. If this gets fully investigated, this guy, they're going to prove $100 million in bribes. Mm-hmm. Well, there are plenty of people along that chain that do killing for a living.
Oh, yeah. Somebody can pop.
And he's not the only one that's at risk there. So somebody's got to move pretty quickly.
This is such a wild thing, and to put it out the way you just did, and I'm glad you have your podcast, but the problem's going to be the liberal media
Liberal media will, I'm surprised they don't take me off somehow, So if you want to get my podcast, can I give the...
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we're going to do that at the end of the show.
Good.
And now, the important one, when you came in, we were talking about this Brad Birkenfeld, and I gave you some information on him.
This is one
he was the one that blew up this whole UBS thing with the Swiss accounts over there in Switzerland, over 20,000 of them, and only 4,000 were given up. Now, the funny part... Why would the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, be assigned to making that deal? Should it have been the Treasury Department or the FBI even? She was assigned to that. And then mysteriously, Bill Clinton gets $1.6 million for a speech with UBS and money to the Clinton Foundation. It's all in here. And this guy exposed it, this guy, Brad Birkenfeld. He's the only one. They sentenced him to 2 years in jail. And this was our friend Holder.
What did he get convicted of?
He got convicted of
tax evasion.
Tax evasion.
Conspiracy to commit tax evasion.
Did he get any credit for his cooperation?
Nothing. He went to jail. The only one that went to jail. You'll read this, Rudy.
I'll take a look.
And right away, the Clinton Foundation's right back. Why would the Secretary of State negotiate the Swiss banking thing? Why? Maybe because her husband got $1.6 million, and then on top of it, Rudy, there was $600,000 sent to the Clinton Foundation again.
Way more than that.
Yeah, all kinds of money. And the guys who never got discovered and were able to, no problems, were all Democratic donors, including some liberal actors in California. And you want to know something? I really believe you gave the synopsis of the Biden family RICO and the Clinton Foundation.
Clinton Foundation is a slam dunk RICO case.
Well, ever since Brand, the guy runs that.
I mean, slam dunk.
Yeah,
and
but
you're going to find. Do you know who the biggest contributors are to the Clinton Foundation? Ukrainians.
Really?
Wow.
Now, Ukraine's not the biggest country, right?
Right.
It's not nearly the richest country.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of rich countries. How could Ukraine be the biggest? There's evidence as to
also
why that
to the Clinton.
Yeah, also to the Clintons.
Nobody cares. It's just all they care about is my president when he says a couple off-candid things, and right away they're ready to lynch him. Right now he's cleaned up so much in this country, and that's why they don't like it, Rudy. They don't like him getting into the bribery in our own government, where you have these lobbyists in Washington, and he wants to get rid of all the bribery. That's
You know this about criminals, because it even goes back way before Trump. The press, the corrupt part of the press, treats the Democrats differently than Republicans. They let Clinton get away with major thievery. When the Clintons were in Arkansas, they were sort of like trailer trash hucksters, making money here and there with the Rose. You got to go to the Rose law firm, get a contract from Bill. They make cash. Boop, 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 boop. Then they go to Washington. They sell the Lincoln bedroom. They start moving up to the middle class crime. Clinton Foundation, we're talking world class crime. That thing was a cash cow for the Clinton family. They used it for all kinds of personal expenses.
Tiano? What's the name of that company?
Oh, come on.
Tiano?
And all of a sudden, you have
Tenio.
every government that wants something out of her, out of the Secretary of State, giving money to it. 2 weeks later, they get what they want.
No, but
the worst one being the plutonium for Russia.
Right.
She votes on the CFIUS board to give 20% of our stock to Russia. And Trump is in trouble for colluding with the Russians to get information about an election, and she gave them a material that could be used to destroy us, and got paid like $2 million in a speaking fee for Bill, $40 million or $100 million to the Clinton Foundation.
Yeah,
more money to the Clinton Foundation from all the people involved. And they don't even bother to do anything.
No,
about
that
it.
company
This is one of 10 bribes.
That company on Brand headed up, Tiano. That company was the offshoot. You had to hire them to get the influence of the Clintons.
Now, why do they do this? They do it because they know they can get away with it. Biden was brought up as he's also, comes a senator from Delaware. His brother starts doing shady things. They do lobbying. They get kicked out of lobbying. They put this company together. The company falls apart. One guy goes to jail for Ponzi schemes. They're using Biden's name all throughout to get money for it. The press writes it. Biden says, I don't know about it. They stop. The minute Biden says, I didn't do it, they stop. It's like all Trump had to say when they said Russian collusion is not true. Stop. Stop. They write ridiculous things like this case is debunked. That is debunked. The investigation got compromised by the bribery. Number two, there's no evidence. You come to my apartment, the evidence, goes up to the ceiling. I mean, I've got so much evidence, it's ridiculous.
Unbelievable.
What, Shokin's not evidence? The document I mentioned is not evidence? Then in addition to Shokin, I've got the assistant prosecutor. I got the prosecutor from another office. I got the special prosecutor. I got 3 witnesses that dealt with the government. I got 6 witnesses.
Who do you think is spearheading this now out of Ukraine? Who do you think is the man behind the curtain?
Covering it up.
Behind the curtain, going after you.
I think Soros plays a role in this.
Well, we know Soros plays a role on the Antifa.
And I think there's one specific Russian oligarch who played a big role in this democratic corruption. Because I think if this opens up, what you're going to see is not just a Biden family pattern of corruption. You're going to see a lot of Democrats going back to 2011 that were playing ball with the Russian oligarchs. Mm-hmm. Several Ukrainians came to me when I went there. It was right after, the controversial call.
Yeah.
And they told me to thank the president for that call. They said, it's the first American president that has finally awakened to the fact that the corruption in the Ukraine is not just about the Ukraine, it's about the U.S. And if you don't solve the U.S. part of it, you can't solve the Ukrainian part of it. And they told me specifically, under Obama, it got much, much worse. They don't know if it was deliberate or if it was a case of complete negligence But every year that Obama was in, the corruption got worse and worse. And as they got away with it, they went further and further and further. And I tell you this, there are more than just Joe Biden involved. So I think one of the reasons that they're fighting so hard to cover this up is when these cases are finally investigated, this will be, Obama administration will go down in history as one of the most corrupt ever.
Even worse than Clinton's?
Oh, made a lot more money. These people made a lot more money. I guess it's inflation, but they made a lot more money. Oh, yeah, worse than Clinton.
Unbelievable.
Certainly what went on in Ukraine, and if laundered money with people that were involved. You have a meeting in the NSC in January of 2016 with the NSC representatives telling the Ukrainian officials to basically go get dirt on Trump, Manafort. What's the National Security Council
involved with that?
Telling people to go get information on a candidate.
So
and they finally do get the information, and it's used politically to try to destroy his campaign. It was the representatives of Biden who asked that.
So the real corruption,
and Laura Ingraham pointed out the other night that there is some evidence that the whistleblower, who we can't mention, was involved in making that request.
Yeah,
that we may be able to go back to 2016 with the whistleblower looking for illegal information
about Trump
to try to blow up or using illegal means to get information to try to blow up the Trump campaign, because the plan at first was not to prosecute Manafort. The plan was to get the money, to get the evidence, make up this book, hold a big press conference, and then Trump couldn't withstand it. He'd have to step down.
So in other words, for our listening audience, they go after Trump for rigging the election when in fact the Democrats were using using the United States government in Ukraine to set Trump up,
including the embassy. Yeah,
and that other one, that woman there, the ambassador. I don't know why you're closer to the president than me. I love my president. I know him 40 years. What was in his mind not getting rid of her sooner?
He did get rid of her sooner, and the State Department obstructed it. And the
How
State
can they
Department,
obstruct the president?
They would just forget about it. They would just come up with excuses. The State Department has played a role of covering this up. I sent them the information about her. They decided she didn't do anything wrong, and they never investigated. They never interviewed Shokin. They never interviewed Lutsenko.
Mr. Mayor, how did institutions...
And they're covering it up to this day. A guy named George Kent testified, and George Kent was her deputy when this was going on. So how do you expect him to testify honestly? He's just as involved as she is.
How did these institutions like the State Department, the National Security Council, how did they become so politicized?
I really do think that was an Obama thing. I think Obama politicized our intelligence agencies and our FBI.
And we left too many of them.
I don't think this happened before that. I think Bush left the FBI pretty much alone, pretty much intact. I mean, Clinton tried to politicize the FBI. That's why Louis Freeh hates him so much. I mean, just interview Louis Freeh and see what he tried to do to the FBI.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, they somehow got into the FBI. They got into the Justice Department, wholly politicized the Justice Department. Remember, a lot of the lawyers who work for the Justice Department are liberal, right? They come from Ivy League law schools. They'd be generally a lot of Trump derangement people. So you're going to have some allies. And the State Department's been terrible for years. But somebody's got to look at why they let her get away with this. I mean, she was running a campaign office in the embassy in 2016 for
the Democrat, for Hillary Clinton.
For Hillary Clinton.
And she was, God knows how much communication she had. I guarantee if you get her phone records, she has direct records to Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, she was a Hillary Clinton person. And then obviously did everything she could to try to help Hillary, which an ambassador shouldn't do. But the worst part of it is the embassy played a role, and the clearest one is the Black Ledger, which was found on the doorstep of a Ukrainian parliamentarian. He brings it in. Instead of using it for law enforcement purposes.
Black Ledger, what is that?
Black Ledger was supposed to be that the Party of Regions, when Manafort was there, paid out a lot of bribes and all the bribes are listed in this ledger, and people sign for them, which is totally nuts. Who would sign for a bribe? So I have independent witnesses from Manafort who will go and say, see my signature there? I didn't sign it. I didn't sign it. I didn't sign it. We got 2 of those. Manafort says, what do you think? That's crazy. Why would I sign for a bribe? That's crazy. They get it. They put it out. They hold press conferences on it. In August and September, we have evidence going back to May that they were planning to do this in order to destroy his campaign.
Wow.
They put it out. They have the New York Times write about it. This is all in August and September of 2016, right before the election. But it doesn't take hold. It doesn't work. Now they try Manafort 2 years later, and they never produced a black ledger as evidence. That's great evidence.
Yeah.
It's real. You know why they don't produce it? Because it's a complete phony.
Wow.
Now, that is a very serious thing to do. In other words, they were trying to frame him before he even became president. They were trying to slime him up so they could destroy him. It's part of what Peter Strzok said. And I think this is, don't worry, he told his girlfriend. I got a plan to prevent him from being president.
This is an FBI
plan to prevent.
We've discussed him at length.
And I have an insurance policy in case he gets elected. The plan to prevent, in his case, was Russian collusion. In the case of Chalupa, who was the DNC representative, and the other people, it was the massive bribery of Manafort. But the insurance policy was, we'll follow up with impeaching him. That's why 6 hours into office, the Washington Post wrote an article about impeachment. Now, I think it's very, very relevant if the whistleblower who comes forward at the end was there at the beginning.
Wow.
Was the whistleblower one of the people that told the Ukrainians to go get evidence on Party of Regents?
Was the whistleblower a mold that was set in?
Was the whistleblower on the National Security Council? I think it was January 16.
Wow.
Did he way back? Was he part of the conspiracy to prevent and then to remove? He's definitely part of the conspiracy to remove. But was he also part of the conspiracy to prevent?
How could we get this?
Now,
whistleblower?
how can somebody like Schiff hold that back? And isn't that part of a criminal investigation? If what I said is feasible, if in fact this was a deliberate, concerted plan to try to destroy him before he became president, in 2 ways with this black ledger that was leaked. If you wanted it for purely law enforcement purposes, you'd never leak it. You'd keep it, right? So it was gotten for public relations. The other part of the plan was to try to wrap him up in Russian collusion, get that all out before the campaign, and finish him off. But Strzok was smart enough to know it might not work because the guy seemed like Teflon, right? So the follow-up plan was, we're going to harass the hell out of him with one impeachment after another, and we'll finally take him down.
Now, why can't our Attorney General Barr, after tomorrow, our president will not be impeached, obviously. So after tomorrow, why can't we full throttle the Attorney General's office to go and investigate these things to show the other side of it?
I can't speak for the Department of Justice and won't, but if you're asking me, is an investigation here justified? I don't think it's justified. I think it's necessary.
Absolutely.
I think it's necessary to vindicate American justice. I think it's necessary for us to be able to deal with Ukraine, honestly. I mean, we're going to tell them, get rid of your corruption, and we're going to leave a vice president to have committed this crime in Ukraine without being held accountable, and a lot of other people.
Yeah, but the conspiracy against Trump.
If we don't hold our people accountable, why should they hold their people accountable?
But the conspiracy against President Trump is probably the biggest conspiracy in our country's history. That the FBI, all these people with the Central Intelligence Agency, everyone was a conspiracy against Trump. This has to be exposed.
Well, I edited this tape last night to put it on the air, and according to another witness, Andrei Teleshenko is the witness, who worked in the prosecutor's office and in the Ukrainian embassy. Then he went back to the Ukraine. There were at least 12 Ukrainian officials and former officials who, starting in 2016, tried to give this information to the FBI.
Wow.
And were turned away. Things like couldn't get a visa from the ambassador. FBI would say they would take it and never respond. A few of them got together and hired a lawyer whose name is Bud Cummings, and he went to the U.S. Attorney's Office, and he presented 2 facts. There's an email to prove it. He presented Biden's corruption and the collusion that was going on, and he told the U.S. Attorney there were witnesses in Ukraine that wanted to come here and talk about it. Responsible witnesses, Prosecutor General, former Prosecutor General, Deputy Prosecutor General. Now, you say, well, they're all lying. Well, I mean, if U.S. Attorney's offices didn't take cases where it starts off that everybody might be lying, you never would have done an organized crime case, ever. Of course they all may be lying, but they all may be telling the truth, and you do it based on corroboration. Sammy the Bull, I mean, but Gotti wasn't convicted because of Sammy the Bull. Gotti was convicted because Sammy the Bull's testimony could be corroborated. Mm-hmm. So when I first got this information, because I'm a responsible lawyer, I didn't go run to the president and say, Mr. President, we got this, we got that, we got this. I said, I want to talk to those people.
And you investigate.
I don't believe in hearsay evidence. I want to talk to Shokin. I want to talk to Lutsenko. I want to talk to Kuliak. I want to see their damn documents. I know I got a case, then I can bring it to my president.
Wow.
And that's why I did it. And they say, well, why didn't you use the FBI?
They tried.
Because I don't know how many of the struck Comey people are still there selling cases out. Why not use the Justice Department? My guys went to the Justice Department, and they were turned away. It looked like the Justice Department only cared about supporting Mueller in Mueller's effort to get Trump. And why not go to Mueller? Because he had no interest in looking at any other involvement in our election but the Russians and Trump. In fact, all of this was available to Mueller. One of the reasons I got the evidence was so that I could show Mueller up if I had to, so that I could argue if we were going to have like a real debate about this. I could argue that Mueller didn't do what an honest prosecutor does. If I'm investigating a guy and there's a suggestion that there's evidence that he might be innocent, I'm required to investigate the innocence evidence,
innocent one,
as well as the he turned that completely aside.
Unbelievable.
Nothing to do with it.
What's happening in Connecticut with the U.S. Attorney?
Well, number one, I don't know completely, and number two, I wouldn't be at liberty to tell you.
Yeah.
Anything I know
I mean,
about
there's
the
an
Justice
active
Department.
investigation.
Well, I think we know there's an active investigation
for things that we're talking about to show the other side about what was happening to stop Trump from becoming president.
Here's the big thing, though. I think there is an active investigation, and I think it's going to be very fruitful. There's a big, big hurdle to overcome with Biden. Fear. Fear that if you put him under investigation now, you're accused of being a prosecutor who's meddling in an election. But the reality is that he created this problem by covering this up for so long.
Yeah.
I brought this out originally in February, March of this year. Put it all out. Put it out on Fox, and I can give you the John Solomon columns in the Hill. Everything I just said to you, not everything, some of it I've gotten since then, but the basic things are all out there. Should have been investigated then, long before the election. You could decide in 3 months whether this is true or not. And either Biden is guilty and he gets prosecuted like everybody else, or he gets what Hillary got. You know, he gets to run. This has to be investigated. The evidence is overwhelming. You got to be a fool not to realize
Mr.
this was
Mayor,
a corrupt situation. Any intelligent person says a crooked, organized crime Ukrainian oligarch doesn't give up $5 to $8 million to a drug addict who busted a company, and he wants to rehab him on the board of his company.
He gave it to the father. That's what.
Particularly when there's a coincidence. The coincidence is that the guy is going to lose his business. The guy is living in Monaco because he's afraid to go back to Ukraine because he'll get arrested. And all of a sudden, the newspapers announce Joe Biden is appointed the point man and is going to give out all the money in the Ukraine. How does it just so happen that he hires the son of the guy who now becomes the most important guy in Ukraine? More important than the president of Ukraine.
You don't believe in coincidences?
And how does this fit the pattern of what Biden did in 4 other countries?
And
we're going to let him get away with it just because he's running for president, because he's a Democrat, and because Democrats get protected like Hillary got protected. We have got to stop this. Our people are bitter. They're bitter because they say they hold us to a different standard.
Which is true.
They ignore unbelievable evidence of criminality on Democrats, and then they go after Republicans on things that are ridiculous. That telephone call with Zelensky, if I'm right, and there's substantial evidence of crime, probable cause for a crime that's committed by the vice president, the current president has got to ask him to invest. It's his duty. Article 2, Section, I think it's 3, says president has to take care that the laws are fully executed. It's his job to do that.
Mr. Mayor.
He should be commended for this. I mean, I see that Manchin wants to do a censure. Censure for what? Censure for asking an investigation for an extremely crooked member of your political party?
You know what? We've been doing this podcast for a year and a half, Mr. Mayor. There's not been one podcast, even with my friend Ken Lango, have I been held to what you've held me to. I'm so interested in what you're saying.
Well, there's more.
And I'm going to tell our listeners, we got a lot of listeners, and we can't wait for your podcast to come out. Before we go to that, I just want to ask you one thing. Aren't you a little nervous about, look, we had the House and the Senate for 2 friggin' years. We dragged our feet from getting things done. My fear is we don't respond to this fast enough to go after this and get Barr, and let's go after this to let people see before the election of November. Because this stuff starts coming out, even people with a small brain will say, well there's more to this. No?
Depending on how willing they are to take criticism and get criticized by the Washington Post and the New York Times for a politicized investigation, when they know that it isn't, that's going to really be the key here. Can they withstand the criticism that will come if they open this investigation? Because it will come, and it'll be painted as if they are trying to interfere in an election.
Yeah.
And I faced things like this when I was U.S. Attorney, and I always resolved it in favor of do the right thing. If it's not interfering in the investigation, if it's actually investigating a very serious crime, then you got to do it. If it comes up the day before the election, you got to do it. And we still have time. If they wanted my help, if I were running this case, I'd get this done in a month. I mean, I've talked to every witness.
You almost got it done in an hour.
I've talked to every witness.
I'm convicted already.
I have all but one of them on tape. I've got the tape recordings of interviews that I did of them. One I haven't because he's involved right now in an ongoing investigation where he's getting more and more evidence. But he'd be willing to cooperate with proper people. And then they can decide. We can't keep having this happen to us, that we have this double standard, and you can be involved in 20 years of a Biden family shakedown,
and no one exposes
in the Clinton Foundation, where money is given in huge hundreds of millions are given to the Clinton Foundation, or Ukraine is the biggest donor to the Clinton Foundation, and nobody wants to find out why.
Wow. All I say is, all our listeners out there, you got to listen to Mayor Giuliani's new podcast. And how do they get to your podcast?
Very, very simple. You go to my website, which is my name, Rudy Giuliani, CS, commonsense.com.
And I saw the promo, the trailer. It's excellent. But the way you line this up like a prosecutor, because you are a prosecutor.
What I am.
And you show the evidence with the witnesses, and anyone who wants to listen to the facts, I tell them, please go to Mayor Giuliani's podcast. And again, I know you're very busy, and I just want to
I guess it's unrealistic, but I mean, if somebody's afraid, I'll prosecute this case.
Why can't we get you?
I mean, make me a special prosecutor. I'll prosecute it. I mean, I have it in my head. When I did the Parking Violations Bureau case against conscious people,
And that was
every newspaper in the city said I couldn't win it.
That
My
was
witness
with
too
the
bad.
congressman up in the Bronx.
Yeah, that was
Friedman.
Stanley Friedman, and it
Yeah.
was the guy in Queens who committed suicide.
Donald
Manis.
Donald Main.
and,
Manis was
the head of PVB. That was nothing compared. That was about a $30
Well,
million bribery
listen,
case.
if the president's listening to
every
podcast, I'm calling upon
the
him.
Democrats in the city snowed the press that my witness was too bad. He was a terrible guy. He was a guy who pretended to be a psychiatrist to take advantage of women. He went to jail for that. Then he went to work for the Queensborough president. He was his bag man. Mm-hmm. So he was the bag man who collected all the bribes and distributed it to the Democratic politicians, including Stanley Friedman. So we put him on the witness stand as the first witness, much worse than Shokin. And the lawyers who were Tom Puccio and, I mean, some of the really best lawyers ripped him apart for a week. By the time he was finished, the chances of our conviction was 0. And the press stopped paying attention. Giuliani's going to get screwed. He's finally going to lose a case. I hadn't lost one yet. Giuliani's going to lose a case. The first time they were rooting against me because the Dems were spinning it. Well, very slowly, for 4 weeks, I put on witness after witness. They haven't paid attention. That corroborated this little piece, that little piece, this little piece, that little piece, this little piece. I could tell you what the most fun one was that they missed because it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon and had to file their stories. Stanley Friedman, Lindenoff, our key witness, he testified that they used to go, he would go give Friedman the results of the bribes for the month at the post house every month because they enjoyed having a steak there on a Monday. They'd meet there, and Stanley wanted to know what his piece was going to be. So he'd take out a little piece of paper, usually a matchbox, and he'd put down, 40,000. And he'd hand it to him to show it to him. And then Stanley would take out a lighter and he'd burn it.
Oh, it's a mafia trick.
Okay, burn it. So Stanley made the mistake of taking a witness stand. And on the witness stand, he denied it. We have all these witnesses all day. 4:30 in the afternoon, I say to Judge Knapp, can I call one last witness? The president's not even in the room. I said, okay, yeah, okay, Mr. Giuliani, we have time for, how long is this? Maybe 15 minutes, okay. Guy walks in, give your name, gives his name. So, where do you work? I work at the post house. How long have you been working at the post house? 10 years. Do you recognize anybody in this courtroom? He said, yeah, I recognize all of them. And they come there all the time. And particularly Stanley Friedman. He used to come every Monday. He seemed to come every first Monday or whatever it was. He'd have like that big fat guy with him. Lindenauer was the big fat guy. And
Lindenauer was in the courtroom.
No, Lindenauer was the court. He was a witness.
Oh, I thought he was sitting in the
The
courtroom.
witness can't sit in the courtroom. He's got to be out.
Yeah.
So and I said, was anything ever unusual happen? And he said, yeah, I mean, first of all, they were all very nice, and they gave big tips because he didn't want to insult them. He said, but a strange thing would happen every time. Every time, it used to worry me. Every time, at some point in the dinner, I'd see a big fire in the ashtray. What the heck are they doing? Nobody does that. You light your cigar. I said, well, how often did that happen? He said, oh God, about two years.
Every
Bam,
Monday.
right to the heart, right?
Wow.
Right to the heart.
There's a corroboration.
Press didn't even cover it. They didn't even know it. Summation, I took that and basically, tell you, it was an 8-hour summation.
Wow.
I used charts. I showed them how, because as the case was going on, there was all these little pieces of corroboration. But when you put it together, it was an overwhelming case. They convicted all of them.
Mr. Mayor, how do I get to the
president? And that's
president?
how I became famous. And that's how I ran for mayor, because they were so surprised that I won. And they covered it on television for 10 weeks. When I came back to New York City, my name recognition was like 95%. They did it by criticizing me, and then it kind of turned.
How do I get to the president of the United States to get you appointed special prosecutor?
Oh, they'll move to dismiss me for.
Why?
A prosecutor can have one side of the case.
Well,
I could do this one in my sleep. I started RICO prosecutions of white-collar crime, public corruption, first to do it. I used RICO to seize the Teamsters Union. No, that one, 135 members of Congress wrote to President Reagan and said I should be fired because I went after the Teamsters Union. Every candidate for president in the 1988 primary, every Democrat condemned me. Every Republican condemned me because it was a Republican union at the time. Members of my own party were pissed at me because I went after our only. They said to me, "You're getting rid of our only union." I said, "No, they're getting rid of themselves."
The corruption. You know,
I didn't give a damn. I mean,
I'm a little.
I've got to tell you know who supported me?
Who?
One guy supported me, for whom I have love him forever. The Vice President of the United States, Bush. George Bush said, and he had the most to lose.
Yeah.
Because he was going to be the candidate for sure, and now he was going to lose his only union. He said, I worked with Rudy Giuliani when he fearlessly went after the mafia, and particularly in drugs. He's a very, very good prosecutor. I wouldn't underestimate him.
Wow.
And the Teamsters Union has been, we have to be honest, the Teamsters Union has been like this for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Something like this is necessary.
Well, in 1980,
My respect for him went up like,
1988, I was involved with President Bush with the re-election thing with his daughter Dorothy at the point.
Yeah.
And I loved Bush. I was in the White House with him several times. And then I'm like a little bit of a crime fighter like you. I get a
little
call.
bit.
I get a call to Washington. A guy named Doug McCarran. He looked like Jesus. He's the head of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters. Still there for all these years. He goes, Bo, what would it take to take over the New York City Carpenters Union, 3 locals with Freddie Devine and all that? I said, it's going to take a big check. So what we did was we followed them to the Teterboro Airport. Devine and all his chieftains were going to go up to Alaska to go salmon fishing. They took off. I assembled 100 armed off-duty cops, retired cops, and we took over on Hudson Street. We took the building over. Now when Fred Devine gets back, they fly in there. I had subpoenas. I hit them all, took their cars away, credit cards. Now all of a sudden my phone starts ringing. You know, this was Gambino guys, Genovese guys. Bo, you excuse my language, you're effing with the wrong people. We know where you live. So you know what I did, Rudy? You know what I did, Rudy?
We know where you live.
Yeah, you know what I did,
We
Rudy?
know where your
I
kid
went
goes
up
to
to
school.
Rayos, and I met a guy that I knew a guy from a guy, and I said, if these guys start threatening my family and me, I'm going to the FBI, organized crime, and the game is going to be over. This is not personal. This is just business. And if I didn't do it, somebody was going to do it. Don't start that personal bullshit with me. And sure enough, we took over the Carpenters Union. What would that take with the corruption that there was embedded there?
Yeah.
We did it with 100 armed guys. And, it was one of my big crime fighting
So
things.
maybe I'll be the special prosecutor, you'll be the special investigator.
You
You think we'd win?
I call upon the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District to deputize me to go after Big Bird de Blasio and his wife, find out what she did with $1 billion, Operation Thrive, all this corruption in New York City.
I tell you what, you help me with this and I'll help you with
Mr.
that.
Mayor, I'm there for you anytime. What a thrill. And I've never had a podcast where I had so little to say because it was so interesting. It was so interesting. And I call upon all my listeners. And again, please give us podcasts.
Sure, absolutely. So it's rudygiulianics.com. And you can check out Common Sense.
When does it start, Mr. Mayor?
If they go there, they can get 2 episodes right now.
We got 2 up. Now
up.
you set this up like a trial. Witnesses.
Yeah. The first one is like an overview. The second one's an opening statement. No, there's 3 actually, and the third one is Shokin testifying.
Wow.
The first half of his testimony.
Why can't we get it on Fox Nation with this?
I'm hoping that it'll get the attention it deserves. When I put together the package, there should be 7, maybe 8 episodes. They're all about a half hour.
I would love for it to get
And
on
we could
Fox
put
Nation.
it in a package.
Yeah,
I think it's sounds
great. So
It shows documents and
I love it.
and testimony.
And if people want to listen to the truth, you go to Giuliani's podcast.
One thing they can't say is there's no evidence of substantial criminality on the part of the Biden family.
Wow.
There's plenty of evidence. Question is,
It's just like,
he's entitled to, like anyone else, he's entitled to presumption of innocence, and he's entitled to a trial. He's not entitled to not get investigated.
It's just like the Gambinos and the Genovese. You had the Clintons and the Bidens.
I don't know if he modeled this on the Clinton Foundation, if the Biden family enterprise is modeled on the Clinton Foundation, but it's very similar. Very similar.
Wow.
The public official does you the favor, and then the family gets the money.
Gets the money, yeah.
So it's like, the family becomes the bag man.
So here's how we wrap it up. We do our thing is we call it Punk of the Week. It could be a thing, person, or anything that really pisses you off this week. This week, what is the issue, person, or something that's really bothering you right today?
Well, the punk of the year is Schiff.
You keep stealing that one from me.
Schiff. And I blame him for what's going to happen tomorrow. Now, the president's going to be acquitted tomorrow, but he shouldn't have to be acquitted.
No, there was no case.
There's no case.
There was no case.
And when I hear my friend, the senator from Tennessee, who's going to vote with us.
Manchin?
No, Manchin says he wants he's going to vote with us, but he wants to censure him. Lee Alexander, from Tennessee, he says he's going to vote against it, but he thinks the president shouldn't have done it. He doesn't understand the facts.
No, he's
how could the president not ask the president of the Ukraine to investigate
corruption.
A vice president that corrupted the Ukraine and leaves a mark on the United States that makes it impossible for us to do our job there? If we prove incapable of holding our crooks to account, how can we ask them to hold their crooks to account?
Right.
It's just simple logic.
What's your punk of the week, Carl?
I would have to say the DNC with the fiasco in Iowa last night. They couldn't get their act together.
Oh, wasn't it funny?
It was ridiculous.
And that was the same group that they used the computer.
I tweeted
the
out.
app was Robbie Mook, a former Hillary campaign
I
staff.
said liberals can't govern.
Yeah.
And they can't count votes, and there's a reason for it.
And
they live in a fantasy world. They can't do anything practical.
Mr. Mayor, my punk of the week is our Fredo governor, Andrew Cuomo. What he did with this criminal reform bill, what he's doing, releasing people with no bail. First it was supposed to be nonviolent felonies, Mr. Mayor. Now they're releasing people, robberies with sheets, and he's my punk of the week. And his brother, Chris, it's not Fredo. You are, Mr. Governor. If you don't rescind this bail reform bullcrap.
All right, there you have it.
All right.
So again, fantastic episode. Thank you very much for Mayor Giuliani for being here. We can definitely send everyone out his link to his podcast, and I'd recommend everyone check that out. You can follow us on social media. We're at One Tough Podcast on Twitter, and Bo is at Bo Dietl on Twitter. And you could email us any questions, comments, concerns, onetoughpodcast@gmail.com. We'll see you next time.
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.